My wife went on a work trip and never came back. Weeks later, I opened the door to find a baby on my doorstep, and a note that shattered everything I thought I knew. That I never imagined I'd find myself in this kind of situation, standing in the ruins of a marriage I once believed was unshakable. But here I am, opening up to complete strangers because, honestly, I don't know where else to turn. My wife, Rachel, and I had been together for 7 years. Things weren't always smooth sailing, but it felt real. It felt like ours. We even have a beautiful 6-year-old daughter, Sophie. I truly believed we were building something lasting. But when I look back now, I can see that the foundation had been cracking long before everything finally collapsed. It didn't happen all at once. It was gradual, almost invisible at first. Rachel started acting more withdrawn, like she was somewhere else even when she was right next to me. At the time, I tried to be understanding. I figured maybe it was the pressure from her new job, or just the everyday stresses piling up. She'd come home later and later, seemed distracted, distant. And when I gently asked about it, she'd brush it off with something about staying late at work or catching up with a friend. I didn't want to be that jealous or controlling husband, so I buried those nagging feelings and convinced myself there was nothing to worry about. But deep down, a part of me already knew something wasn't right. That's what eats at me now more than anything, the way I ignored what was right in front of me. It started with small, almost insignificant things. Rachel would be glued to her phone at odd hours, laughing softly at messages she'd claim were just from a group chat. She began talking about these sudden work trips that never used to come up before. I wanted to believe her. I really did. But now, looking back, all those little red flags are as clear as day. Things really started to take a strange turn a few months back. Rachel told me she had to go on a business trip to Boston, and right away something about it didn't sit right with me. There was this gleam in her eyes, like she was genuinely excited, but not in a work conference kind of way. It felt different, like there was something going on that I wasn't a part of. She spent a ridiculous amount of time packing for that trip. I watched her as she carefully picked out each outfit, paying close attention to every little detail. I mean, I get wanting to look sharp for a work event, but she went over the top, buying new lingerie, picking out these sleek, stylish dresses, things I hadn't seen her wear in years. Not for me anyway. I told myself maybe she just wanted to feel confident, to bring back that old version of herself. But in the back of my mind, a quiet voice kept whispering that something was off. The night before she left, I made an effort. I tried to reconnect with her, to create some space for just the two of us. I even suggested we take a small trip together sometime soon, just the two of us, maybe get back some of the closeness we'd lost. But she didn't seem interested. She gave me this half-hearted response, something like, "We'll talk when I get back, okay?" Then she kissed me on the cheek, a cold, routine gesture that didn't carry any warmth behind it. That was the last night I truly felt like I had a partner. The next morning, I drove her to the airport. I helped her with her luggage, gave her a quick hug, and watched her walk toward the terminal. As I stood there watching her disappear into the crowd, something deep in my gut twisted hard. Felt final. Like I was watching the end of something and I just didn't know it yet. For the first few days while Rachel was away on her trip, everything actually seemed normal. Maybe even better than usual. She'd call me every night before bed, saying how packed her days were but also how much she was looking forward to being back home. She sent me pictures too, smiling by the hotel bar, dressed up for dinner with coworkers. She looked incredible. Seeing her like that made me second-guess all the doubts I'd been holding on to. Maybe she really did just want to feel good about herself again. Maybe I'd let my insecurities get the best of me. One night in particular stands out. She texted me a photo of herself standing in the hotel mirror, wearing this sleek black dress I hadn't seen her put on in years. She looked breathtaking. I texted back something like, "Wow, going all out for Boston, huh?" trying to keep it light. She laughed it off, and then followed up with another picture, this time in lingerie. The kind of intimate thing she hadn't shared with me in what felt like forever. My heart actually skipped a beat. Along with the picture, she sent a message, "This one's just for you, winking face. In that moment, I felt a sense of relief, even hope. Maybe I'd misread everything. Sure, the clothes and the effort were for work, but the lingerie? That had to be for me, right? It felt like a sign that she still cared, that I still mattered to her, even with all the distance we'd been feeling. I started letting myself believe that this trip had done some good, that maybe the time apart had given her a chance to remember what we had. We even talked about how, when she got back, we'd carve out some time just for us. I'd send Sophie to stay with my mom for the weekend so we could reconnect, like we used to before life got so busy. For the first time in a long time, I felt hopeful. I began counting down the days until she was home. I cleaned the house top to bottom, even planned a surprise dinner for her return. I wanted everything to be perfect. But then, the messages just stopped. Everything fell apart on the last day of Rachel's trip. I hadn't heard a word from her since the night before, and it was starting to gnaw at me. She always sent a good night text, even if it was just a quick, sweet dreams. But this time? Nothing. I tried to stay calm, telling myself she was probably just tired or caught up in something. I didn't want to spiral. Then, around noon, my phone rang, and when I saw the name on the screen, my stomach turned. It was Sarah, one of Rachel's co-workers. I'd met her a couple times at company gatherings and we'd exchanged polite small talk. But why would she be calling me now? I answered right away, my voice shaky but trying to sound collected. Hey, is everything all right? There was a long pause. Then she said, I don't want to alarm you, but Rachel was taken to the hospital last night. They think it was food poisoning or something similar. She's going to be okay. The words hit me like a punch to the chest. Hospitalized? Food poisoning? I was already grabbing my keys, fumbling for my laptop to check flights. Why didn't anyone let me know sooner? I asked, my voice rising despite my best efforts to stay calm. Sarah tried to reassure me. Please don't panic. The doctor said she just needs rest. She'll probably be discharged tomorrow. Rachel didn't want to worry you. She told us not to call, but I thought you deserved to know. I didn't care what Rachel had said. I couldn't just sit at home while she was lying in a hospital bed hundreds of miles away. I'm coming out there, I said firmly. Just send me the name of the hospital. There was a pause, barely a second but enough to notice before Sarah replied. Honestly, there's no need. She's already feeling better and it wasn't anything serious. Just a rough night. She'll probably message you later today once she's had some rest. Really try not to stress. Everything in me screamed that I should ignore her and just go anyway. But Sarah kept repeating it. She's fine, don't worry, just let her rest. I was torn. Against my better judgment, I stayed put. I told myself to trust that Rachel would reach out soon. So I waited, clutching my phone like a lifeline, hoping to see her name light up on the screen. But the longer I sat in silence, the heavier that familiar weight in my chest became. That gut-deep feeling that something wasn't right, it was back, stronger than ever. Days started slipping by and still, not a single word from Rachel. At first, I tried to keep myself calm. I told myself she was probably just exhausted, still recovering, maybe the doctors had advised her to take it easy. I didn't want to bombard her with messages or calls, especially if she wasn't feeling well. I didn't want to be that clingy husband who couldn't give her space when she needed it. So I waited. But then a full week went by. Every morning I'd wake up, check my phone before even getting out of bed, hoping for something, anything. A text, a missed call, a simple, hey, I'm okay. But there was nothing. The silence was deafening. At first, I told myself maybe her phone had died or maybe she'd left it somewhere. I tried to believe that. But the longer the silence dragged on, the harder it was to ignore the anxiety building in my chest. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. I gave in and called Sarah, the coworker who had told me about the hospital situation. If Rachel still wasn't feeling up to reaching out, maybe Sarah could at least give me a sense of what was going on. The phone rang a few times before she picked up. Hey Sarah, I said quickly, my voice tight with worry. Sorry to bother you, but I haven't heard from Rachel since you called last week. Is she still in the hospital? Do you know if she's okay? There was this long, unsettling pause on the other end. Way too long. I could hear her shift like she was trying to figure out how to respond. Then finally she cleared her throat and said, Wait, what do you mean you haven't heard from her? I mean exactly that, I said, my voice starting to crack just a bit. It's been a whole week. Not a single call or text. I figured maybe she was still out of it or needed time, but something feels off. Another pause. Longer this time. Heavier. Hold on, Sarah said slowly, almost like she was trying to process it herself. You're saying you haven't heard from Rachel at all? Since last week? No, Sarah, I said firmly, my stomach churning now. Not one word. I've been waiting. Checking my phone every hour. What's going on? Is she still in the hospital or what? That's when I heard her take in a quick breath, sharp and nervous. I thought you knew, she said, her voice trembling. Rachel was discharged days ago. I felt the breath leave my body the moment Sarah's words sank in. She was discharged days ago, she repeated, but it sounded distant, like her voice was coming from the bottom of a well. Everything around me suddenly felt far away. What are you talking about? I asked, my voice shaky, tightening with panic. Rachel's not here. She never came home. I haven't heard a single word from her since the night before the hospital. How is that even possible? There was another pause, this one more loaded, more hesitant. The trip ended 2 days ago, Sarah finally said. All of us flew back. Rachel was with us at the airport. We said our goodbyes. Her flight was scheduled for a little later than ours, but she seemed fine. I just assumed she made it home after that. My mind was spinning. So, Rachel had been discharged from the hospital, and no one told me. She'd made it to the airport, stood with her colleagues, smiled, said goodbye, and never came back? Never called? Never even sent a text. I pressed, trying to make sense of it. So you left before her? She stayed behind for a later flight. Yeah, Sarah said, her voice quieter now. She said she'd catch up with everyone back home. She didn't seem upset or anything. Just tired. I figured everything was normal. Have you tried checking with the airline? Maybe there was a delay or, I don't know, a mix-up? But her words barely registered. My hand tightened around the phone, trembling. I couldn't think straight. Rachel should have been back days ago. She should have called, at the very least let me know she was okay. I think I said something to Sarah, I can't even remember what, and ended the call. I sat there, staring at the screen in disbelief, waiting for a message or a call that just wouldn't come. Everything inside me screamed that something wasn't right. She should have been home. She should have said something. But there was only silence. That was the moment the panic really set in, full force. My thoughts started spiraling, racing through one worst-case scenario after another. I couldn't sit still anymore. I had to do something. I had to find Rachel. I started making calls, grasping for answers, hoping someone, anyone, might know something. First, I called the airline she was supposed to fly home with. I gave them her full name, the date of the flight, even the confirmation number she'd forwarded to me days earlier. But they were no help. They confirmed she had a ticket on a flight 2 days ago, but when I asked if she'd actually boarded or if the flight landed on time, the agent gave me the standard line. I'm sorry, sir, we can't release passenger information without their consent. I tried to stay calm, but frustration was building fast. I thanked them, hung up, and cursed quietly under my breath. I was hitting wall after wall. Then I started calling her friends. Maybe she'd stopped somewhere on the way home, or maybe there had been some kind of change in plans that she hadn't mentioned. But one by one the calls all ended the same, confusion, concern, and no answers. Most hadn't spoken to her since before the trip. One of her close friends, Jessica, sounded especially alarmed. That's really strange, she said. She usually checks in with me after she gets back from a trip. Are you sure everything's okay? That question hit me like ice water. No, nothing about this was okay. I even called Rachel's family, hoping maybe she'd contacted them for some reason. But they were just as in the dark as I was. No one had heard a thing. The dread was creeping in faster now. I called Sarah again, hoping maybe she remembered something, anything, that could help make sense of what was happening. Are you absolutely sure she didn't mention staying longer, or changing her plans last minute? I asked, my voice tight with desperation. But Sarah didn't know anything more. We all thought she was flying home. Nothing seemed off, I swear. She hugged everyone goodbye at the airport. I don't understand this any more than you do. As a last hope, I reached out to the hotel where she'd been staying during the trip. Maybe someone at the front desk had seen her or had a record of her checking out. But no luck there either. The receptionist was kind, but the response was firm. I'm sorry, sir, but once guests check out, we don't keep personal details on file. I was running out of options. Every call led to a dead end. Every attempt to piece things together just deepened the pit in my stomach. And then there was her phone. Her phone, usually buzzing with texts, notifications, group chats, was just dead. I must have called it 100 times, and every single time, it went straight to voicemail. No rings, no pings, just silence. I sat there, the weight in my chest pressing harder by the minute, my heart racing. I was trying to keep it together, but it felt like everything was slipping through my fingers. Rachel was gone, and I had no idea where to even begin looking. I was barely holding it together. After days of silence, unanswered calls, and nothing but dead ends, I felt like I was coming apart at the seams. I sat on the edge of the couch, phone in hand, staring at nothing, trying to figure out what to do next. I was seriously about to call the police. I mean, what else was there? My wife had vanished. No one knew where she was. It had been over a week and not a single word. I hovered my thumb over the screen, ready to dial the local station when my phone suddenly buzzed. It was a text from Rachel. My heart slammed against my ribs. My hands shook as I opened it, praying for answers, for a message that would explain everything. Something that would say, I'm okay. I'm sorry. Just anything. Instead, all I saw was a photo. It was an ultrasound. No message. No context. Just a grainy black and white image of a sonogram, staring back at me like some surreal, cryptic puzzle piece. I blinked, my brain struggling to catch up. An ultrasound? What was this? Was she trying to tell me she was pregnant? Why like this? Why now, after all this time in the dark? I immediately tried to call her. My fingers trembled as I hit dial, but the phone rang once, then straight to voicemail. Again. My breath caught in my throat. There was no relief. Just a deeper, sharper confusion. The silence wasn't just back, it was louder than ever. Was she really pregnant? And if so, why hadn't she told me before? Was this why she'd been so distant lately? Was this what she was dealing with all on her own? Or worse, was it even mine? A cold knot twisted in my stomach and I couldn't sit still. I needed answers and fast. There was only one person I could think to call. Jessica, Rachel's closest friend. If anyone knew what was going on, it'd be her. When she picked up, I barely got the words out. Rachel just sent me an ultrasound photo. No message, no call, just that. Do you know anything about this? Did she say anything to you? There was a pause on her end, and then I heard the concern in her voice. No. No, she never mentioned anything to me about being pregnant. Another pause, longer this time. Then cautiously she added, "Can we meet in person? I think we should talk. Something about all of this doesn't feel right." My heart started racing again. Jessica sounded as rattled as I felt, but maybe, just maybe, she held a key to this whole thing. Maybe sitting down with her would help me start putting the pieces together. There had to be a reason for all of this. There had to be an explanation. I met up with Jessica at this quiet little cafe downtown. My stomach was in knots the whole drive there, a strange storm of dread and fragile hope swirling inside me. I was clinging to the slim chance that she might have some kind of answer, something that could help make sense of the chaos that had become my life over the last several days. When I arrived, I could tell right away that Jessica wasn't at ease. She looked anxious, like she didn't want to be sitting across from me, like she already knew how much this was going to hurt. She barely made eye contact as I approached, and that alone sent my nerves spiraling. We sat down and I didn't waste a second. "Jessica, please," I said, leaning forward, my voice more desperate than I intended. "I got an ultrasound photo from Rachel. That's the only thing I've heard from her in over a week. She's disappeared, no calls, no texts. I don't know where she is. You've got to tell me what's going on." Jessica sighed, her hands wrapped tightly around her coffee cup. She stared down at it for a long time before speaking. "I didn't know how to tell you this," she said softly. "I really thought she would have told you by now." My heart started pounding. Every second she waited felt like another ounce of pressure building in my chest. "Told me what?" I asked, almost afraid of the answer. Finally, she looked up, and I could see the guilt written all over her face. "That ultrasound photo, it wasn't meant for you. She sent it by mistake." I stared at her, confused, trying to make sense of what she was saying. "A mistake? What do you mean it wasn't meant for me? Who was it for?" Jessica's eyes dropped again, and her voice dropped with it. "Rachel's in Paris. She's been seeing someone else. The photo, it was meant for him." I sat there, stunned. It was like everything inside me just went silent. "Paris?" I repeated, barely able to say the word. "She's having an affair?" Jessica nodded, slowly, her expression pained. "I'm so sorry. She's been seeing this guy for a few months now. I don't know all the details, but she left to be with him. She moved there. That's why she's been distant. That's why you haven't heard from her." It felt like the bottom fell out of my world. My wife was in another country with another man, and I had been here, clueless, waiting, worrying, thinking something had happened to her. I couldn't even find the words. "And the baby?" I finally managed to ask. "Is it mine?" Jessica hesitated. "I don't know," she said gently. "She never said. I don't think even she knows for sure. But she's not coming back." I just sat there, hollowed out. Everything I thought I knew about my life had been flipped upside down. All the silence, all the distance, all those little moments I'd brushed off, they all made sense now. Rachel had been living a second life, one I wasn't part of. And she'd left me behind without a word. Now, I didn't even know if the child she was carrying was mine. I wasn't just heartbroken. I was lost. I walked out of that cafe like I was in a fog, barely aware of the street around me, the cars passing by, the sound of people talking. Everything felt muted, like the world had gone distant. Jessica's words kept echoing in my head. Rachel had left me. But worse, she had left us. My wife of 7 years had packed up her life and flown to Paris to be with another man. And as painful as that was to accept, What tore me apart the most wasn't just that she left me, it was that she walked away from our daughter, from Sophie. How do you just vanish from your child's life? The betrayal dug in deeper than I thought anything ever could. I understand that marriages break. People drift apart. I've seen it happen. But to leave your kid? To move halfway across the world and not even say goodbye? I just couldn't wrap my head around it. I sat in my car outside the cafe, staring out the windshield as the city moved around me like nothing had changed, when everything had. My mind kept running in circles, replaying every moment of the past few weeks, trying to connect dots I had missed. The late nights. The sudden business trips. The distant looks. It was all right there in front of me, and I had been too trusting, too hopeful, to see it for what it really was. And now there was the ultrasound. That image haunted me. I couldn't stop seeing it. Was that baby mine? Had she been carrying our child while planning to disappear from our lives? Or was this baby part of her new life, her new family, with him? The thought made my stomach twist. The not knowing might have been the hardest part. That photo, sent by mistake, had opened a door I didn't even know existed. And now, I had no way of knowing what was real anymore. But more than anything, I couldn't stop thinking about Sophie. How do I tell a 6-year-old her mother's not coming home? That she left without a goodbye? Every night since Rachel went on that trip, Sophie had been asking, "When's mommy coming back?" And every night I told her soon. Because I believed it. Because I needed to believe it. But soon had turned into silence. Now I was the one who had to explain the unexplainable. To carry the weight of a mother's absence. To figure out how to help our daughter make sense of a world that had just been flipped upside down. I gripped the steering wheel, feeling hollow, the pain pressing down on me like a boulder on my chest. How could she do this to us? To Sophie? If Rachel had stopped loving me, fine. That hurt, but I could deal with it. But to abandon her own child, that's something I'll never understand. This wasn't just a breakup. This was the unraveling of a life I thought we were building together. The dreams we shared, the promises we made, all shattered in a single moment. And now, I'm the one left behind, trying to piece together a life from the broken remains. Alone. The months that followed were a blur. After the initial shock wore off, I was left in survival mode. Every day felt like trying to walk across broken glass. Slow, painful, uncertain. But if there was one thing that kept me grounded, it was Sophie. She had no clue what had really happened. How could she? She was 6. Still innocent. Still asking when mommy would be back. And I didn't have the heart to tell her the truth. So I told her mommy was still away for work. That she was doing something important. She believed me. For now. Through it all, Jessica, Rachel's best friend, became something like a lifeline. She showed up in ways I never expected. She'd stop by with groceries, help straighten up the house, and sit with Sophie when I couldn't even pull myself out of bed. At first, it was strange seeing her around so much. She was, after all, Rachel's closest friend. But over time, her presence became something steady in a life that had been turned upside down. She became part of our daily rhythm. Dinner. Bedtime stories. Helping Sophie brush her teeth or pick out her clothes for school. After Sophie went to bed, Jessica and I would sit in the quiet, sometimes talking, sometimes not saying anything at all. She didn't try to fix me. She didn't push. She just listened. And in those moments, I felt like I could finally breathe. There were times I almost forgot about Rachel. Not in a cold or careless way, just in the sense that her absence didn't sting quite as much. It was a strange kind of relief, and at the same time it felt like a betrayal. Still, some nights I couldn't sleep. I'd lie awake thinking about Paris. About Rachel's new life. About the child she was carrying. Was it a girl? A boy? Did it look like her? Did she ever think about us? Those thoughts didn't come as often anymore, but they still crept in when I was tired and vulnerable. As the weeks turned to months, I poured myself into Sophie's world. School lunches, bath time, cartoons, scraped knees. I rebuilt something resembling a life without Rachel in it. The wound hadn't healed, not completely, but it had started to scab over. And then, out of nowhere, everything tilted again. It was a quiet evening like any other. Jessica had come by like she always did. Sophie was already asleep, tucked under her blanket, clutching her favorite stuffed rabbit. Jessica and I were in the living room sipping coffee, just sitting in the calm of the evening. Then my phone buzzed. I barely looked at it, thinking it was probably spam. But then I saw the number, one I didn't recognize. I opened the message without thinking. It was a photo. A newborn baby. Underneath the image, a single sentence. "She's here. I'm sorry." I dropped my phone. It hit the floor with a dull thud and I just stared at it, frozen. My mind couldn't make sense of what I was seeing. My breath caught in my chest. Rachel had given birth. And she had chosen now to tell me. I sat frozen, the photo still glowing on my phone screen. That tiny face, eyes closed, wrapped in a soft blanket, and those words beneath it, "She's here. I'm sorry." They echoed in my head over and over, like a cruel whisper that wouldn't stop. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. The wound that had just started to close was ripped wide open all over again. And then the doorbell rang. I didn't get up right away. I just sat there, heart pounding, knowing deep down that whatever was waiting for me on the other side of that door, it was going to change everything. My legs felt unsteady as I stood and walked slowly to the front door, the silence in the house thick and heavy. I opened it, and the moment I did, it was like the air got sucked right out of my lungs. There, on the porch, was a cradle. Inside it, a baby. Fast asleep, bundled tightly in a pale blue blanket. His tiny chest rising and falling with soft, peaceful breaths. But Rachel, she wasn't there. There was no sign of her. Just the baby. I stood there in shock, my hands trembling as I looked down. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. My mind raced, trying to make sense of it all. Then I noticed a folded piece of paper tucked next to him. I picked it up with shaking hands. The note read, "This is your child. I don't need him. Take him and raise him." The world just stopped. That was it. That was all she had to say. Rachel had left our son, our newborn son, on the doorstep like he was a package she didn't want to carry anymore. Just like that. No call. No explanation. No goodbye. Just gone. I sank to the floor, right there beside the cradle as everything came crashing down. My chest tightened. My eyes stung. And then it all spilled out. For the first time since she left for Paris, I completely broke down. I wept. For this tiny baby who had already been abandoned before he could even recognize a face. For Sophie, who still waited for her mom to come home. And for myself, because once again I was left alone to clean up the wreckage Rachel had left behind. She didn't just walk away from me. She walked away from everything. I couldn't understand it. I still don't. How does a mother leave her own children behind? Not once, but twice. How do you just let go of a baby like he's a burden? That note? It was colder than anything I'd ever imagined coming from someone I used to know, someone I used to love. And so I sat there, next to a cradle I never expected to see, holding on to the only piece of Rachel that remained, a little boy who had no idea what kind of world he'd just been born into. She was gone. And I was left with 2 kids, a broken heart, and a hollow space where my wife used to be. Everything changed after that night. Holding that tiny baby boy in my arms, barely a few days old, completely unaware of the storm he'd been born into, I knew exactly what I had to do. Rachel was gone, not just in the literal sense but gone in every way that mattered. Emotionally absent. Detached. Cut off from the life we once built. She had abandoned not just me but both of her children. And any shred of love or hope I still held for her vanished in that moment. I wasn't going to waste another second waiting for her to come to her senses. She'd made her choice. Twice. First when she walked away from Sophie without a goodbye, and now again, when she left her newborn son on my doorstep like he was someone else's problem. I made a decision that night. I was done letting her have any hold over us. I was going to file for divorce, and more than that, I was going to fight to have her parental rights revoked. A mother doesn't abandon her children. Not like this. Not ever. And thankfully, I wasn't doing it alone. Jessica stood by me through it all. She'd already been a steady hand for Sophie when everything first fell apart, but now she was right there in the thick of it, helping with bottle feeds, calming a fussy baby, walking Sophie to school, filling in all the broken spaces that Rachel had left behind. She never asked for recognition. She never made it about her. She just showed up, day after day. To say I was grateful doesn't even come close. She treated both kids like they were her own. And I honestly don't know how I would have made it through those first few weeks without her. But this time, I wasn't the broken man waiting in the silence. I didn't crumble. I took action. I called a lawyer and got the divorce process started. It felt strange, almost surreal, to take such a final step after everything we'd already been through. But it was necessary. I explained the full story, Rachel's abandonment, the lack of contact, and the fact that she left a newborn child without so much as a phone call. The lawyer was direct. "You have a very strong case," he told me. And for the first time in a long time, I felt a small flicker of hope. This wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about anger. This was about love. Love for my kids and the life they deserved. They needed stability. They needed to know they were safe. That someone was here for them no matter what. And that someone was me. Sophie, with her bright, curious eyes and the way she still asked too many questions at bedtime. And my son, barely big enough to hold my finger, with a future I now held squarely in my hands. They were mine. My responsibility. My reason. I would raise them. I would protect them. And I would never, never, let them feel abandoned or unloved. One evening, not long after the paperwork had been filed, I sat on the couch watching Sophie play with her baby brother on the rug. Her laughter filled the room and he kicked his little legs and made those soft baby sounds that melt you no matter what kind of day you've had. And I realized then, this was my family now. Maybe it wasn't perfect. Maybe it wasn't how I ever pictured it. But it was ours. Rachel was gone. But we were still here. And that was enough. That night I made a promise to myself. I would raise these two beautiful kids with every ounce of love I had. I would be their foundation, their shelter, their steady place. The parent who stayed. The one who showed up. The one they could always count on. We would be okay. I would be okay. Months passed and life, slowly but surely, began to settle into something steady again. The chaos, the uncertainty, it all started to fade as the dust finally cleared. The divorce was finalized and with it came an unexpected sense of calm. The court granted me full custody, and Rachel's parental rights were officially terminated. It was done. No more waiting, no more wondering. No more pretending. I was free. Free from the betrayal, from the sleepless nights spent waiting for a text that would never come. Free from the silent weight of a marriage that had already ended long before Rachel boarded that plane to Paris. The chapter was closed, for good. And in its place was something better, peace. Rachel was no longer a part of our lives. Not legally, not emotionally. That door was locked, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I wasn't haunted by her absence. I was present. I was focused. I was building something real, right here, right now, with my children. Sophie was thriving. She had adapted to this new life with more resilience than I thought a 6-year-old could possibly have. She stopped asking about her mom as often. The questions slowed, then softened. Sure, there were moments, quiet ones, where I could see a flicker of sadness in her eyes. But mostly she was smiling again. Laughing. Running through the house like nothing could touch her. And I knew she was going to be okay. My son, every single day he reminded me why I fought so hard. Watching him grow, hitting every little milestone, the first time he smiled, the first time he rolled over, the way he looked up at me like I was his whole world, it lit something in me. A kind of pride I never knew I needed. I had saved him from a life of uncertainty, and in turn, he had given me a reason to hope again. And then there was Jessica. She had never left my side. From the moment Rachel disappeared, Jessica had been there, first as a friend, then as something more. Not in some sudden romantic way. It was gradual. Quiet. She became the constant, the calm, the one who stepped up when everything else had fallen apart. Midnight bottle feeds, storytime, school runs, she did it all without question, without complaint. And every time I looked at her, I found myself wondering how I got so lucky. She never once made me feel like a burden. She never expected anything from me. She just gave, her time, her care, her heart. She stepped into a role none of us saw coming, and she did it with grace. She didn't just help me rebuild my life. She became part of it. Things weren't perfect. They never would be. The pain Rachel left behind didn't vanish overnight, but it stopped ruling me. I let go of the bitterness, the what-ifs, the pain that used to keep me up at night. And what I was left with was something I hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. My family wasn't the one I started with. But it was strong. It was real. And it was enough. Jessica had become more than just Rachel's old friend. She was part of our home now. She had chosen to stay, to love us through it all, and that mattered more than anything Rachel had taken away. And me, I had found my footing again. Not by forgetting the past, but by building something better from its ashes. Sophie, my son, Jessica, this was my family now. And we were going to be okay. No, not just okay. We were finally good. A year passed almost quietly. What started as the most painful, soul-shaking chapter of my life slowly began to transform into something I never could have foreseen. The storm had passed. The ashes of the divorce settled, and with them came a calm, not just for me but for Sophie and my son. Rachel became a distant memory. The sting of her betrayal was still there, tucked somewhere deep, but it no longer ruled my life or shaped our home. And then there was Jessica. What began as comfort, as quiet support during long nights and early mornings, turned into something more, gently, naturally. At first it was unspoken. Just late-night talks after the kids were asleep, a lingering look across the kitchen table, a closeness we didn't quite name. But slowly something real took root. It wasn't scandalous or rushed or born from loneliness, it was simply honest. Unexpected. Jessica had already been part of our daily rhythm, stepping in not out of obligation but out of something deeper. Love, I think. Not just for me but for the children too. She loved them without hesitation. No fear, no boundaries. She became their steady presence, their safe space. Sophie in particular changed under Jessica's care. She stopped asking about Rachel. She started to shine again, doing better in school, smiling more, laughing with that uninhibited joy I feared had been lost. She grew into her role as big sister, doting on her little brother with a kind of protective tenderness that melted me daily. And she looked at Jessica not like she was filling in for someone else, but like she had always been meant to be there. And then one day life gave us something more. Jessica was pregnant. I'll never forget that moment, standing there, the test in her hand, the nervous, tearful smile on her face. And then that sudden rush of warmth in my chest. Not fear. Not worry. Just joy. A clean, beautiful beginning. Our kids were thrilled. Sophie was already planning names. And as the weeks passed, everything began to feel like it had finally settled into place. Not perfectly but right. This wasn't the family I once imagined having. But it was ours. And it was good. Looking back now, I sometimes catch myself wondering how things might have turned out if Rachel had stayed. If she hadn't disappeared, if the betrayal hadn't unraveled everything. But then I stopped myself, because that life, that illusion was never real. This one is. Jessica didn't try to replace Rachel. She simply became what my children needed. What I needed. Not because she had to, but because her heart was big enough to hold us all. She brought peace where there had been chaos. Love where there had been loss. This story could have ended with bitterness. I could have folded. My kids could have grown up chasing a ghost of a mother who never truly wanted to be part of their lives. But instead we found a way forward. We found something better. And now, as we prepare for the newest addition to our family, I realize this wasn't the end of anything. It was the beginning. A second chance. A life rebuilt, not perfectly but beautifully, honestly, and with love. This is our story. And somehow, against all odds, it became the best one I could have ever hoped for.